Today's video is going to be some chicken basics. So let's go have a walk and a talk and we'll figure this out. So let's go over some chicken basics. And I think the first thing to address would be chicken terminology. I think that would be the easiest thing to cover. Here are some terms that you need to familiarize yourself with. A pullet is a young hen that hasn't started laying. A cockerel is a young rooster who hasn't reached maturity yet. When you go to buy your chicks at like Tractor Supply, Rural King, feed store, whatever, you need to know what a straight run is. A straight run is chicks that have not been sexed. In other words, they don't know what sex they are. And when you buy a straight run, you could get, half roosters, half hens. If you can't have roosters, I would shy away from the straight runs, because chances are you're going to get some roosters, and probably more than you want. The next thing is, and like I said, pull from the pullet containers. They've been sexed, or there's such a thing as sex-linked chickens. Crested cream leg bars, red stars, those are hybrids, and when they're born, their color tells everybody what sex they are. Hens are one color, roosters are another color. Next thing to know is chickens, when they eat, their food goes into their crop. And the crop you're going to see when a chicken has just eaten, the front of their chest will bulge on the right-hand side, I do believe it is. That's their crop. They don't have a growth. They don't have a tumor. That's basically kind of their stomach area. So know that there's nothing wrong when that swells up. Next thing, spurs. Yes, roosters have spurs, but did you know hens can have spurs too? Yes, they can. I have a Rhode Island red hen who has spurs. All chicks and pullets and cockerels have what they call spur buds on their legs, one on each side. So that you can't use that to determine sex. Hackles. Hackles are the feathers around their neck. Hackle feathers in roosters or cockerels are going to be long, skinny, and pointed when they start maturing. Long, skinny, and pointed. The hens is going to be wider, round, so you can tell the difference in the hackle feathers. Also, saddle feathers. Saddle feathers are the group of feathers just above their tail. And cockerels, roosters, what do you want to call them, their feathers are long, skinny, and pointed. Hens are wider, rounder, and shorter. And if you look closely at chickens, adult chickens, you can see a difference in their tail area too. Hens, I always compare it to like praying hands. They come together in a point. Let's see, what else do we need to cover here? Dust baths. Chickens do not take bubble baths. Okay? I don't care how hard you try. You're going to give them a bubble bath. They're going to go out in the coop and roll around in the dirt. That process of a dust bath is to keep pests away, to keep lice and mites and etc. off of them. There's a point to that. And when you give them a bath, it strips the oils from their feathers. So don't give them a bath unless you absolutely have to. Grit. Grit, because I live in Florida, we have sandy dirt, I offer a bowl of just dirt to my chicks from day one. And then they get that all the way up to 3 weeks. That's how long I keep them in my large tote brooder. And then they go out on my screened-in patio in a large, it's like 4x4 brooder, and they stay in that until they're 10 weeks old. You're going to need a cover for that brooder that's breathable so they can get air, because about 10 days to 2 weeks, they're going to start jumping out of that thing. Yes, they're dusty. Yes, they're dirty. Yes, you're going to have to change out their water a dozen times a day. Just be warned. You're going to need a chick waterer, and you need to introduce them by just pushing their little beak gently into the water so they know where it's at. And feeder, I have found it easier just to use a saucer to put the feed on, because no matter what you put it in, they're going to kick it everywhere. That's just what chickens do, and that's what chicks do. Their bedding, I use pine shavings. You're going to need a heat source for that brooder. You can use a heat lamp. That's what I have, but I have what they call safety heat lamps. They don't get as hot, or you can use a hot plate. But yeah, you're going to need a heat lamp, waterer, feeder, tote, bedding. I don't use medicated feed. I don't believe in treating a chicken for something that they don't have. The less chemicals and all that stuff I put in a chicken, the better. And I have never had a chicken sick. Now, when you buy chicks from like Tractor Supply or Rural King or the feed store stuff, those chicks have been shipped in. And those chicks are going to be susceptible to a condition called pasty butt. And what it is it stresses them out. They're stressed out from the shipping. And it basically kind of gives them almost diarrhea, but not quite, where they can't pass the feces all the way through and it sticks on their rectal area, their vent area. And you have to check those chicks. You need to check your chicks anyway, but you need to check your chicks several times a day. And if they have pasty butt, put their little bum underneath the faucet. You know, don't have it going full force, just a little bit of warm water. Put their little bum in there and let it kind of run the water on it, and then you'll be able to break that up, get it off their bottom. You know, I take a paper towel, dry their little butt off, and put them back in the brooder. Now, if you don't treat pasty butt, it will kill them. It blocks their vent area from disposing of the waste, and it will kill them. So, pasty butt is a big must to watch out for. Oyster shells, when they get bigger, I don't do oyster shells. Crushed oyster shells. I feed their shells back to them, and I don't have any problem. And all I do is I throw in the halves. I don't cook them. I don't bake them. I just throw the halves into their coop, into their run, and they eat them, you know. You need to not overdo. You can't put a whole lot of chicks in a little tote brooder. You got to buy a number of chicks for the size of your brooder. So, my little tote brooder, even though it's a large brooder or a large tote, I only like to have about 6 in there. And I'll tell you, by 3 weeks, they're running out of room. And that's a large tote. We're probably talking almost 3 foot by at least 20 inches wide. You know? So don't overbuy on the chicks. Or if you're going to buy a larger number, say a dozen, have 2 totes. because if not, you're going to run into some issues with keeping it clean and overcrowded and pecking on each other because it's so crowded. And yeah, you need to keep the number manageable in the totes. Don't overbuy. I moved the okay, yeah, I said I take them out to the big brooder. They stay in there till they're 10 weeks old, and then I introduce them to the younger. No, this is where it gets complicated. I have what they call a transition area where I take my 10-week-olds and they go in this transition area until they're ready to start laying. A lot of people don't have that. So you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to have an additional coop area that you can put these young chickens in until they reach the same size as your adult chickens? Or are you going to take the chance of trying to introduce these 10-week-old chicks that are going to be a third of the size of the adult chickens into the chicken run, and hopefully they don't get pecked to death? Because seriously, that's what's going to happen. Yeah, I've heard people talk horror stories about that happening. So I never introduce my young ones to the older ones until they're the same size and they're ready to start laying. And how I do that is I have a separator that I put the younger ones in, and I leave them in there for about 2 weeks. That it's chicken wire. They can see the other chickens can see them. They get used to each other. You know, it's a smaller enclosure because it's inside my other enclosure. But, you know, after 2 weeks, you can let them out. And if the older one's still picking, take the younger ones back and go for a few more days. Yeah, that can cause some really serious issues. You don't want to have your 10-week-old pullets killed because you put them in too soon, you know. Some common illnesses and remedies. Okay, now a couple of these I do not know how to cure, or at least one of them I do not know how to cure. And I've heard people do this, but don't quote me on it, okay? Common illnesses is bumblefoot. That is like, say they pick up a splinter in their foot and it gets infected. You're going to they're going to start limping. You turn them over and they've got this big black knot on their foot. That's infection. And you need to soak them in Epsom salts and get that black knot out of there because that's infection, and clean that out and put antibiotic on it. And keep putting antibiotic on it. Wry neck. Now I have had a case of wry neck in my flock, and how I cured that was a teaspoon with their feed. I isolated them, a teaspoon of black oil sunflower seeds, which is the highest you can get in selenium and vitamin E, twice a day. So give them the black oil sunflower seeds in the morning and in the evening. Help them eat and drink if they need it. They're going to lose their balance. They're not going to be able to stay on a roost. They'll starve to death if you don't help them. Egg bound. When a hen's egg bound and you can see their vent area is pulsating and just nothing's coming out, and she's straining and straining and straining, and she keeps going back and forth to the nesting box and nothing's coming out and stuff. You need to take her, soak her in a bath of Epsom salt water, warm, and let her sit there for 15-20 minutes. Take her out and see if she can pass the egg. Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut can be caused by a couple of different things, and it can also lead to the next thing too. Sauerkraut, it's things that they can't digest. If I feed them celery, I make sure I chop it up fine. Well, you know, like a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch pieces, because celery is hard to digest. Grass clippings. Grass clippings, do not feed your chickens. They may love it, but those long, slender pieces, blades of grass are going to impact your chicken's crop eventually. Then they're not going to be able to eat. Then they're going to starve to death. Sour crop, you can see, you take away their food and water. I think it's not, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like for 8 hours, and then feed them plain yogurt. It's like almost like an indigestion problem with sauerkraut. Sometimes you might need to help them regurgitate to get that whatever it is out. And there's videos on YouTube that shows how to do that. I've never had to do that. But impacted crop, that's a bad one. A chicken will die from that. And I've heard of people doing surgeries on their chickens. Don't do it because I said so. Literally having to cut into their crop and getting the impact out, which is always grass. Like massive amounts of clumps of grass. So, well, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment and I'll answer it as best I can. And don't forget to give me a like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. And I will talk to you later.